All right, let's bring in our guest for this hour. Here to discuss is trial attorney Michael Jafer. Big case Mike. Great to see you, Michael. Always a pleasure. Mike, I want to start with Officer Marianne Robb on the stand, one of those responding officers to the scene. Seems like she testified pretty much corroborating the things that Boudreaux testified to last week, especially his demeanor. How important is her testimony to the prosecution's case? Because to me, it seems like it helped strengthen their case by bolstering Boudreaux's credibility.
1,000%. That's exactly what happened. And also they were aided by something that they didn't have to work hard on, which is Lori Vallow. She basically allowed well, I called him an expert. She allowed that officer to testify and look like an expert, even though it wasn't an expert, because there was tons of objections she could have leveled when the officer was on direct examination. She didn't do it because she's not a lawyer and she's kind of a moron. And her cross-examination was not great. Look, Corey, I think that this case, I think a first-year graduate of law school with no experience could beat this case. Lori Vallow, I don't think, is going to beat this case. She's innocent until proven guilty, but she's doing a terrible job in her own defense. She made the choice. She made her bed. Now she's sleeping with it. But that's exactly my position on that officer testifying, because that officer verified what the state's theory is and what Brandon Boudreaux explained, even though there were tons of holes in what she said. But those holes were not exposed by the defendant.
Well, to that point, Michael, talking about holes, do you find any holes in the prosecution's case going on right now? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember any definitive evidence of her saying, hey, Alex, go kill Brandon.
Tons of holes. I could dice this case 6 ways to Sunday in my first year out of law school, right? I don't even know where to begin. First of all, there's no direct evidence that Lori Vallow did anything to Brandon Boudreaux. There's no direct evidence that she sent any type of instructions to her brother or anybody else to harm Brandon Boudreaux. She had emotional distance from the victim, right? He was her nephew in law, right? He had a messy divorce. She had no involvement with it, right? She clearly didn't care about her niece or his marriage. She had zero motive to do it. There was no direct evidence that she instructed anybody, her brother or otherwise, to do it. It's still in question whether or not her brother even tried to murder Brandon Boudreaux. And there's no location data. There's nothing. So there's not only are there holes, there's almost like there's no case. And this is kind of a piling on effect. She brought it onto herself because of the fact that they kind of knew that she would defend herself. But Cody, there's so many young attorneys in Arizona that would crawl over broken glass to take this case, to be on national TV, on court TV, defending Lori Vallow, knowing that they're going to win the case. All they have to do is a basic job, and they can live for the rest of their careers and build their reputation on winning this case. So tons of holes.
Absolutely, Michael. It seems like the prosecution's relying on a lot of circumstantials at this point. All right, Michael Jafer sticking around. All right, let's bring back in our guest to discuss this hour, trial attorney Michael Jafer. Michael, talk to me about how hard it is to prosecute a case where one of the alleged culprits is not here. Alex Cox isn't here. He can't take the stand. He can't testify. The prosecution's relying on a lot of circumstantials. How difficult is the state's burden here?
Oh, so the state starts with an already high burden. Whenever one of the main culprits is not present, the burden is even higher. Also, when the events are old, even if everybody was there, it's even higher than that. So this is among one of the most difficult types. It's not a cold case, but it's almost like prosecuting a cold case, right? There's lots of similarities. So this is a very high burden. I always, train young attorneys that I train in my office, whenever you have a case with a glaring weakness, always lean towards the strength of your case in hopes that the jury will buy into the strong part of your case and the part that will really just aid you when the jury goes back to the deliberation room to deliberate the case. Don't let them focus on the weak side of the case. Let them focus on the strong side of the case. In this case, the weakness in their case is exactly what you just asked about, right? The fact that it is highly circumstantial. The strong side of the case is basically having them hate this defendant. This defendant almost opened the door to them bringing in the fact that she murdered her children, right? And even if she didn't open the door to that, there's tons of evidence here that they can lean on that would make the jury really, really not trust this defendant. And so, again, it's a very difficult case for the prosecution. but they're following the playbook that every prosecutor follows whenever they have a difficult case with an already high burden.
Doing the best they can is what I'm hearing. One more question here, Michael. Outside of lawyer Lori herself, possibly taking the stand in her own defense, do you think she'll call any witnesses this time around? Because remember, she didn't call any back in April in her previous trial. And who would she even call if she were to take the stand?
I hadn't thought of it until you just asked it. That's a great question. I think she should have called a witness and several witnesses in the prior trial. I think she should do it here. Will she do it? Difficult, because she's done everything she can to hurt herself and her defense. But to your other question, should she take the stand? Absolutely. She needs to take the stand. I mean, she's already basically taken the stand by having the trial herself. But she might as well just go ahead and complete it and take the stand, because this is an imminently winnable case. She could win. A young public defender with no experience would win this case, would most likely win this case. So I think she should take the stand. Will she do it? I don't know. She's done everything she can to hurt herself, but let's see what happens.
Michael, you're one of the first people I've talked to that said she should take the stand. Everyone I've asked said that she'd get eviscerated if she took the stand. So that's an interesting take there, Mr. Jafer. Thank you for sticking around tonight. Always great to see you, man.